Good morning from Moscow. It's Thursday, the 27th of August. In a moment, advice from one Russian paper on how to talk peace with Vladimir Putin. First, Tuesday's surprise visit to Moscow by the CIA director, John Ratcliffe, is getting column space now in the Russian papers. The headline in the Russian government paper, Rossiyskaya Gazeta, "There's always a reason for a visit like this." Okay, but what was the reason? That's the question everybody's been asking, right? And the article doesn't really answer that, except to quote Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov, who says there were contacts between the intelligence agencies. Vedomosti declares John Ratcliffe Person of the Week and notes that he's the highest level American official to have visited Russia in 5 years. The importance of this cannot be overstated. That's really building it up until you read the next paragraph. We shouldn't make a big deal about this guest and get our hopes up so that we're not disappointed. There is disappointment in Moscow, I think, that Donald Trump's envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner didn't bring about an end to the war in Ukraine on Russia's terms. The paper says this about these two men. It seems that they are unable to organise work with other US departments. Without that, the regular diplomatic process is unlikely to move. As America's chief non-public diplomat with official status, the CIA director may be more useful than Witkoff and Kushner for organising regular dialogue. Moskovsky Komsomolets notes that Western media have been claiming that he came to warn the Russians, that allegedly the US has information about preparations in Russia for a new mobilization to finish off Ukraine, or for a possible attack on European countries to test NATO's readiness, or both, and that the head of the CIA had to explain that this shouldn't be done. According to another version, the visit could be linked to the US announcement of a new stage in the campaign of sanctions against Iran. As you may have noticed, the versions revolve around two components, Iran and Ukraine. It seems that something very serious is being prepared, perhaps even the resolution, one or the other, of these two conflicts. On to Nezavismaya Gazeta and this editorial, which I find quite interesting because it reads like something that isn't aimed at a domestic audience at all, rather a foreign one. It's entitled, "Are European Leaders Ready for Direct Dialogue with Moscow?" Now this follows the Kremlin's criticism of Finnish President Alexander Stubb for supporting long-range Ukrainian strikes deep inside Russia. President Stubb has said in the past that he would in theory be willing to play a role in any potential future peace talks with Moscow if there is a ceasefire first. Well, the editorial states that if a politician is preparing for the role of negotiator, they should publicly behave like a diplomat. The aim should be to achieve at least the most basic level of trust of all sides. Not a single European politician comes close to this goal. It's not about pleasing Moscow. The point is at least not to annoy it with public speeches and statements. The fact that European politicians are constantly talking about the need to force Russia to the negotiating table indicates an unwillingness or inability to understand precisely with whom they're going to talk. The option of force does not work and has never worked with Vladimir Putin. If it's so important for European leaders to look like winners who managed to force Russia and Putin to do something, the talks will end before they begin. When trying to launch at least some kind of negotiation mechanism, it is impossible to ignore the habits, psychology and principles of the participants of the process. Putin has been in power for a quarter of a century, long enough to study his behaviour. A peace deal should look like a victory for Russia. European politicians ignore this circumstance. Rather, they propose that Russia admits defeat. It is easy to understand that Moscow will not agree to this. And this is the crux. How do you bridge that gap between a Kremlin, which will only accept a settlement it can present as a victory, and European leaders who strongly believe in supporting Ukraine, a country Russia invaded and against which Russia is fighting a war? Now, I said before that this reads as if it's aimed at an outside audience, but I imagine it's something that Russia's president would enjoy reading if it ever landed on his desk. Well, because it's Thursday, there is no Komsomolskaya Pravda today, but there was yesterday. So here's a joke from yesterday's edition about opinion polls. Opinion polls have revealed that on the whole, the population is satisfied. But people find it difficult to define what exactly they're satisfied with.